turned as she jumped across a grate in the sidewalk. Her cork-brown knees and legs glistened with Vaseline petroleum jelly. 2 of her 3 thick braids bounced against her shoulders. Her front braid brushed against her face and wiped the glaze from the corner of her mouth. Jessie laughed as she leaped across grates and manholes. He was a short, muscular man with tiny feet. His caramel eyes sparkled beneath eyebrows as thick and black as electrical tape. His round nose sloped over a pencil-thin mustache and small lips. His mouth turned down in a crooked smile. His brown skin reminded Neecey of golden brown cornbread. When Neecey held his hand, she felt his calloused fingertips against her skin, but always when he touched her face, his hands were gentle. The stores disappeared behind them as they made their way home, jumping across manholes, skipping over cracks in the sidewalks, laughing, running, waving at bus drivers, and oohing over fancy cars, Buicks, Chevrolets, or Cadillacs that soared down the street like big birds. When they turned off busy Halsted Street into their quiet neighborhood, women working in their gardens exclaimed, "What a pretty little girl!" Neecey giggled and clasped Jessie's hands. Yes, she was her daddy's pretty girl. A thin girl with a long oval face. Her hazel eyes questioned everything. Her nose commanded the center of her face while her lips, thick and full, spread in a continuous smile. Jessie called her his little cutie pie, because she was happy to be so cute and her daddy's little girl. Neecey skipped ahead of him, singing, "Skip, skip, skip to my loo." Her small, squeaky voice rose and disturbed the quietness of that Saturday morning. Jessie, knowing the child could not carry a tune and would never be able to sing a decent note, lifted his bushy eyebrows and grimaced at the women. When they approached their gray stone building, Neecey spied her Uncle Pete leaning against the wide gray column and puffing on his pipe. She ran the last few yards, yelling, "Uncle Pete! Uncle Pete!" "How was your trip, honey bun?" He laughed. His narrow eyes sparkled under a thicket of eyebrows. Pete and Jessie's eyes and lips announced to the world that they were brothers, but the resemblance ended with the thick eyebrows, caramel eyes, and small lips. Pete had a pointy head like a football and a parrot nose that hooked over his tiny lips. Jessie's was compact and round. Pete was tall and angular. Jessie had small feet. Pete had large feet that always appeared to be moving in different directions. "What kind of donut you get today?" Pete asked. Glazed, Uncle Pete," she laughed and widened her big round eyes. "Glazed?" Pete laughed and scooped her up. He spun her around, her legs flew out like kite tails. "Ah!" she laughed. "Put me down, Uncle Pete." "Put me down." "Don't make her throw up," Jessie warned as he walked up the steps. "Glazed donuts coming in for a landing," Pete said as he lowered her to the porch. He stooped and pulled a big white handkerchief from his back pocket. "You better wipe that glaze from your mouth before your Auntie Della sees it and has a hissy fit." "Lord, Jessie," Pete imitated Della's voice, "you ain't got good sense giving this child sweets before lunch." Neecey laughed and grabbed his cheeks. She watched his mustache stretch into a thin black line across his face. "Auntie Della," she said, "what a big mustache you got." "Honey bun, your hands are sticky too," Pete said in his own voice. Jessie laughed. "I thought we could sneak past Della today." "She's sitting at the dining room table with her Bible opened," Pete warned as he rubbed his handkerchief across Neecey's hands. "You ain't getting past her today. And man, you gonna catch the Sox game with me or what?" "Be ready before you can say Jackie Robinson," Jessie laughed. "Let me get the kids taken care of." Neecey and Jessie stepped into a jungle of houseplants. Philodendrons, rubber tree plants, and mother-in-law tongues. The jungle separated the dining room from the living room, with its furniture sheathed in plastic. A door off the living room led into Pete and Della's bedroom. Pete's wife, Della, sat at the dining room table with her eyeglasses perched on the tip of her nose and an open Bible on the table. Behind her was a door leading into the bedroom that Jesse shared with his wife and 3 children. The center of the plants rustled. Neecey spied the bright red shirt of her 4-year-old brother Jack. "Shh," Jesse said. "Arg!" A tiny voice came from the plants. "Daddy, Daddy!" Neecey clutched Jesse's leg. "It's a monster!" "Arg!" Jack said. He walked out of the plants with his arms held high above his head and his hands bent like claws. He resembled Jesse, from his thick, wavy hair to the small frame of his body. "Get him, Daddy!" Neecey cried and hid behind Jesse. "Take the bag, sweetie," he said and shoved the package at Neecey. She wrapped her skinny arms around the large bag and placed her chin upon the box of donuts. Jesse dashed forward and scooped up Jack. "I got the monster!" he shouted. "I swear, Jesse," Della said as she looked up from the Bible. Her bat eyes peered over her glasses. "You're worse than a child." "You're worse than an old snot, Della," he laughed. Like Pete, Della was all bones and angles. While Pete was a soft, playful brown, Della was a dark, hard brown. Her shirtwaist dresses lay against her chest like linen on a table. Her small breasts were puckers that didn't hold much promise of pleasure. Her arms and legs were as skinny as new saplings. Neecey noticed that, as usual, Della was rubbing her left toes around the ankle of her right foot. Her pencil-thin eyebrows narrowed into a V. Her small eyes seemed to disappear in their sockets. "How many donuts you let this child eat?" she asked Jesse. "About 6," he lied and set Jack on the floor. He took the packages from Neecey and started past Della. But 22-month-old Odessa wandered out of the bedroom with a bottle dangling from her mouth. She saw Jesse and her eyes widened. She popped the bottle from her mouth and ran to him. Jesse swept her up with his free arm and imitated W.C. Fields. "My little chickadee." He walked past Della with Jack on his heels. "Come here, Neecey," Della beckoned as Neecey passed her. She turned the Sunday school book over onto the Bible and drew Neecey to her. She lifted the thick braid that hung down the side of Neecey's face. Her fingers were rough and hard like Jesse's. "Got glaze all in this child's hair?" Della called to Jesse. Della rubbed the braid between her forefinger and thumb as she stared into the child's almond-shaped eyes. "Honey, you gotta learn to say no thank you or you gonna be Auntie's fat dumpling." Neecey looked into Della's little eyes. "I only ate 2, Auntie." 2 is too much sugar for a little girl. I expect you won't eat a bite of lunch." Della pushed her glasses up on her face. "Ain't hungry," Neecey said. "Jessie!" Della shouted down the hall. "You hear this? She ain't hungry. You filled her with all that sugar and ruined her lunch." "Della, she had a hot dog." Jessie returned from the kitchen. "And a Coca-Cola and French fries and probably a couple of paydays," Della shouted and rose from the table. "Only ate 1 payday, Auntie." Neecey stepped back and looked up at the tall tree of a woman. "That's too much sugar," Della exclaimed. "You're going to drink a glass of milk right now." Milk was Della's cure-all. Della grabbed Neecey's hand and pulled her down the hall. As they passed the bedroom, Neecey saw her mother lying with her back to the door. Her arm rested upon her large beach ball belly. Perspiration ran down Ruby's face. She felt the sweat attacking each of her red pin curls. Nevertheless, she refused to get up and open the window, refused to let them know she was awake. Children everywhere, she thought, and rubbed her belly. She hummed a few bars of God Bless the Child, then stopped. She closed her eyes and listened to the family scurrying around the kitchen table.